Welcome. It's great to see you. Great to have you. Welcome to week 10. I can't believe it's week 10. Oh my gosh. It's been a great experience thus far for me. So I can't believe we're coming up to the end. But we're not there yet. So I hope each of you are all healthy, safe, and well, and your loved ones are safe and well as well, and enjoying this beautiful weather. I know we're about to get some more rain, which was great. I love the hail last week. So we're going to get some more rain, thankfully. But welcome, and I'm letting people in as I speak from the waiting room. Um, Greetings to all of you via TUC, situated in Vallejo on the occupied and unceded land of the Miwok peoples and other First Nations Californians. This week, we are going to continue our discussion and focus on the topic of criminal justice reform and policies or lack thereof. These specific policies that we're going to be discussing have had detrimental consequences on people who've been wrongfully convicted. So tonight, it truly warms my heart to welcome back to Touro, University, California, again, Mr. Obie Anthony. He can write several books on this topic. Mr. Obie Anthony was sentenced to life without parole for a murder he did not commit when he was 19 years old. California incarcerated him for 17 years. And there were a team of attorneys who's going to talk to you about at Loyola Law School Project, and as well as the Northern California Innocence Project. And they took his case, and prosecutors, they found that there was concealed evidence, and that by law they had to disclose that. So there was a lot of false testimony as well by some of the prosecution's witnesses. Upon exoneration, Obie has dedicated himself since then to supporting other exonerees to meet their basic needs after release. And he was instrumental in the passage of California Assembly Bill number 672, nicknamed and cited as Obie's Law. This bill requires the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation to assist exonerees with transitional services, including housing, assistance, job training, and mental health services. In 2016, Obie founded Exonerated Nation, and we are so proud and privileged to be working with this organization as they're one of our biggest community partners, and they have assisted us with our research projects to date. But this organization is committed to transforming the experiences of exonerees after release and building a community that can provide safety, stability, and healing to wrongfully convicted Californians. So Obie has testified to state legislators several times, and he's collaborated with partners and allies to pass more laws such as SB 1050, AB 701, 702, and 703, which we've all read about prior to this evening's class. Obie is an activist, he's an advocate, a husband, and a father who continuously speaks to large and small audiences locally and nationally, and I think internationally, right, as well, about his experience and his and his organization's triumphant achievements. So I just want all to give a warm welcome to Obie Anthony. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I mean, hearing you, state those things is, I have been like, okay, she's talking about me at times. But it has been an amazing experience. In other words, to work with my demographic and with this demographic in regards to individuals that have been affected by the criminal justice system. Not only as far as the effect that it had on them on the front end, but specifically and particularly surrounding, as Namisha spoke about that transition. What happens, when we come home, and really our efforts to not only to correct those wrongs, but to deal with the immediate effects of those individuals really surrounds a lot about confidence, right? To have, so those individuals can go out within the society, within their community, to have the confidence and the reassurance that they're not, not so much that the stigma does not apply to them, but that the fact that the stigma that is there surrounding prison and re-entry is not taking a hold upon them because they have assistance to navigate their way through those sort of kind of hiccups and issues that happens because of the stigma for being in prison, irrespective of whether you're innocent or not, and what that happens for an individual, and how they transition back into the community and the effects on that in regards to the public health is concerned and in its totality. So I'm really grateful to Misha and to Touro for our relationship and for our long-lasting relationship that we've been having, and not only in aspect and respect to the immediate help, but also that what she spoke of in respect to the research aspect and the work that we're doing there, because I'm a firm believer that facts matters, and to get facts you need data, and the only way you're able to get that information is through research and through investigation, and I really believe in Touro's mission and what they do in respect to that, and specifically around public health and as it applies to the criminal justice system. So thank you guys for having me again.
Thank you. So, Obie, I wanted to ask you if you wanted to talk to us about what it was like, once you were released from prison and after the CIP and the Loyola group. I know that it was probably a rude awakening to what you were about to experience. Could you describe that for us?
I mean, description of sort of kind of that whole exoneration and having that total process of having someone or having a group of people arms wrapped around you through a heroin and sort of experience, and realizing that no one knows the total outcome of that, of even of their help and what it's going to look like on the opposite end of that. It was very nerve-wracking, I'm gonna tell you, very, very, and that's sort of kind of what it's been. And I like to sometimes, I describe it sometimes as a roller coaster event where you have sort of kind of your ups and your downs and your loops and your turns throughout. Though it's all exciting, yeah, but it doesn't remove sort of that gut feeling that one has when he's going down that roller coaster ride. And that's what happens with my transition, and with sort of kind of, entering back into the community and realizing that it's just not me that's going through these things, but it's a population, it's a demographic of us that's experienced these same similar things in different ways and in different areas. And that is that when you go down, that gut feeling is that, again, that losing that confidence that, one, that we're going to be accepted within that same community. Two, losing the confidence in our communication, whether or not we're being understood and accepted in that aspect of it. And then two, the confidence in success and realizing the overwhelmingness of all of the different things that has transpired and changed: technology, education, economics, social behaviors, everything has changed. And so when you're going down, that downward sort of kind of thing is like, you really fall into that like, man, I've been gone for all this time and so much can happen, and I can't, you feeling like I can't start to rise in you. But then, somehow or another, things like this, events, you get asked to speak somewhere, and you begin to start talking about your story, and the power of it affects you even because you're talking in it, and you're talking in that power. And so that becomes that upshift in your upcoming and sort of kind of your transition. So you have that in almost everything, because you got to deal with family, friends, trying to find a job, and it's a crazy navigation, but and a really challenging one. And I like to be, in the mix of that, helping individuals because of the struggle that I went through coming home, just with those same things, and not having no group, no place, in other words, to kind of where I can hang my hat on. Like, when you're going through all this, it's like a counseling session or a group session where everybody can go, because we all understand and appreciate what we all sort of travel through, what we're going through at that point, and feeling like that's the only place that we can vent and not be judged, and to be accepted and without judgment at the same time. And so Exonerated Nation has been, been really grateful for being able to fill that space when it comes to the exonerated population, because we realize and understand the necessary need of that, specifically on for our mental health is concerned, and our capability, in other words, to advocate, our capability, in other words, to be able to go back to school and navigate through the processes of those things, through tuition and all of that, and getting accepted and everything that comes along with that. There's a few exonerees that come home. And we're really grateful for the passage of AB 701 that gave, made that waived tuition and made it possible for those individuals to have free tuition to get into school. But again, it's navigating through that, right? It's understanding the process and getting online and having the confidence, in other words, that it's going to come to a good end and not a bad end. And the reason why that's always at play is because you have to remember that for so long of a period of time, all of us fought for our own. We advocated for our innocence in there to get exonerated and have multiple denials, even after we put in a tremendous amount of work and thinking that the work that we put in was going to be successful, and having that sort of kind of that continuation for me, maybe like 10 years, throughout the year that went by, where, maybe at least 5 to 6 times out of the year that I had gotten a denial from a court, denying my claims, telling me for one, procedurally barred or whatever it is. And so, again, getting back to that aspect of it and wanting to build back that confidence that you may get denied sometimes, but you're going to get accepted sometimes too, and not to give up. And really is the confidence, for one, never to give up. And I'm just grateful to fill that space and do the work that we do through legislation and through one-on-one work that we do with the exonerees.
Right. In terms of, I know that you have already mentioned the lack of social, just services, in terms of they were basic things, and I know we've all read about a little bit about it in some of the articles or your bio, but not having, having to teach yourself everything all over again. So there was, what was missing, like how to get a copy of how to get a driver's license, just basic things, the transition to housing, and what was, could you find a doctor?
Right, it doesn't seem complicated at all. Like it should be no issue to get your ID, your driver's license, and things like that. But when you after being in prison for a certain amount of time, the California Department of Motor Vehicles disposes your identification, which puts you in a limbo, right? Because now, if the California Department of Corrections does not continue to track or to notify the Department of Motor Vehicles, updating your ID, updating your photo, updating your thing with them every so often, then it was crazy. I literally, I don't know if you can see the article that I have hanging on the wall behind me, but I literally used to have to keep a photo of me that came out in an article with my name on it for maybe about 4 or 5 months in my drafts, so that it could be out for identifiable purposes, because I had to go through the process of getting the birth certificate, then getting my ID, to get the social security card. And that took a time. And I'm really grateful for my then fiance, now wife, to be able to come home to that blanket of sort of security where I have to worry about the shelter, and I can have at least her assistance with the navigation of moving me around with that. But I'll tell you, after a year, she got kind of tired of it. She got kind of, you should be able to, go out on your own now. You should be able to, you can do this and you can do that, but still being patient with me through that process. And so, just the simplest things in respect to identification, which makes it even more complicated for everything else: jobs, housing, medical. For you to be able to apply for medical, I couldn't apply to get a job without no ID. And then I had a place, I had a location, I had an address, but I had to have all of the other stuff to go with it. And so, but for the predominantly bulk of the exonerated population, we have to remember that's not the case. They come home and having to stay with family members. They don't get a chance to come home to have their own thing. And it leaves them in transition, constant flux, I'll say, because you don't know the length, in other words, that you'll be able to stay with a family member. Because of the normalcy of conflict just built around personalities. You've been absent for, man, 20 years. No, you're trying to get to know them. You got your own psychological sort of things that you tripping on. They tripping on you and your stuff. And so you bounce. So you have no stability in respect to having a location to have a job to be able to send an address to. Some family members may not be comfortable with you sharing any information out like that. Nevertheless, and so there is a bunch of hurdles that the exonerated individual has to go through. Different than that individual who's coming home that's on probation and parole. And that's why Obie's law was so meaningful and so purposeful, because at least it opened up the conversation for us to be able to be, in other words, for them to be start acknowledging the wrong that they did to the innocent population in the state of California. In other words, not to say that that was the end all, because Obie's law connected exonerees to the existing services that was there for individuals that was coming home on probation and parole. And they're not situatedly fixed or situated put together for individuals that were innocent in there, who suffered different plights than a guilty individual that was coming home with a determinative day, that when they went to the board, they had an opportunity, they expressed their remorse and, change and all of those things. But for the innocent person, when they went to the board, I'm not guilty of this stuff. I'm not going to be admitted to you, to none of these. And so they continue to stay in that flux. And that's that same thing. And for when we come home, just by the simple, no ID, not being able, just the little small things, man. Like I couldn't even, I really had issues putting the application in. I didn't know what information to put on the resume. Like, yeah, I worked the whole time I was in prison, whether it was I worked in the laundry, I worked in the kitchen, I worked as a barber, I cleaned the buildings, I worked on the yard, did all of this stuff. But I didn't know how to translate that into real world stuff that's happening out here. And so it was a complication on how do I turn this? And then once I was made aware of that, the fear of lying was there, right? Like, well, this was in prison. You want me to call this, we worked in the kitchen. It was a scullery. You want to say I had, culinary work because I worked in the kitchen there. Like, isn't that kind of fuzzing and the fear of being caught to be put back into that place? It's just wild, the kind of psychological trip that happens for us in transitioning back into a community that's totally unaware of what we're going through. Like, a lot of people are aware what soldiers go through with their PTSD returning back to society, because there have been studies and information that's been put out there about that. And this, what Touro is doing and what we're doing now, we're in that process so that we can begin to get that information out there so that future individuals can be aware, and there can be things that are in place. So when future exonerees come home, it's similar to that of individuals coming home on probation and parole, where it's a process that initiates before they walk out of the door. So when they come out of the door, it is not such of a complication, because when people come home on probation and parole, they get connected through the counselor in prison. So they have that initial contact before they walk out of the door to understand this is where you want to go. This is the person you need to talk to. These are the things you need to get. This is the time, and all of those things. Who's doing those? Who's doing that for the innocent person in prison? No one, because they believe everyone in prison is guilty. And so why set up a program that is specifically, surrounding individuals that have claims of innocence, that may have an opportunity to get out because they have innocent projects that are working on their case, pro bono lawyers working on their case, and investigators to get them out. I just think that that's, the more humane thing to do, which is that. And I believe that what we're doing now with this, this studying to extrapolate this data and this information will help facilitate that at some time in the future.
Right. So I wanted to ask you, in terms of what Exonerated Nation does, I know what they do is they provide a lot of training. First, I know there's like the navigation of, the whole system that I think it's difficult to when somebody is being released, you just the person who's being released, who's wrongfully convicted, does not know until like the last minute, and it's
Right.
not, that's a really, that just makes the whole process
Just that,
really just like worse. It just and
just that
it's like
much
you
more
can't,
intense,
yeah,
just that much more intense because realistically, you will want that person to have a social worker upon that, in a counselor that can help them with that, just that, that it's all, can you imagine this? Imagine it this way. Here you are going to school for the last several years. You stop at the corner store down there, you always get your little scratch off. You put your numbers in, all of that, Powerball, you do your stuff. Just so happened though, that this Powerball that you put in is the $1 billion jackpot, and you hit. That flush of emotions, that flush of that anxiety that happens, like, oh man, your whole world is now changed. That's what happens when that gavel go down. That person just hit, it's like you just got the $1 billion saved. And it's like, whoa, and like it's that rush of all of the uncertainties that are there smacks you in the face because you don't know anything. Like, goodness, like what do I do? Who do I turn to? And how do I get the help that I absolutely need? And you're right, it's just that much more intensified because you don't know when the dude going down with that gavel, he's gonna say yes or no. Just like when you scratching that scratch off, you don't know if it's gonna be, is this that last number? And so when that guy, when you finally hit, and that announcement is that he finds you, that he's exonerated, he finds you innocent. It's like, man, everything that you thought about before that moment goes out of the door. Because before that moment, it was about a bunch of thoughts of what if this and what if that and if this and if that. And now you have an answer. And now it's time to act upon all of those things. And, it's just, it still is a whirlwind of challenges, and it still is a whirlwind of exciting things too as well. And that's why I'm so thrilled to do this work, because doing this work actually helps me figure that process out too. So as I discover these new things and things, in other words, to help our community, it's because I'm seeking it out for my help, and I realize the benefit and how it helps. And so I want to spread that help to our population that needs it the most. And when it comes to leadership development, when it comes to our healing process to deal with the prison traumatic stress, when it comes to our transitional issues, when it comes to navigating through the bills that have been passed and how to being able to get access to those things, it's worth that sort of that moment of anxiety when you're like, oh, is this it? So it's been great. I can't. I'll do this work like this until it's like that point where you feel like, for me, it's like I could do this until I know, like, your baby is grown now and it's not falling. You don't have to play the lifeguard no more. And for me, the lifeguard situation with Exonerated Nation is that I no longer have to say something to the state of California about the wrong that they've done to this community, because they recognize the mess that they made and they are doing the things that's necessary to clean it up. They putting in place accountability. They setting up programs for innocent individuals without any people like myself that has been affected by it, that have to keep coming back, advocating over and over for help. Like, that's not falling no more. That's the kid. That's the parent no longer having to be the lifeguard. I think that's who we are with your kid. The parent, the kid is just, man, you playing lifeguard. Stop doing this. Don't jump off of that type of thing. And that's the same thing with our population, is that we have to help navigate through this process, because it's not easy. We've had exonerees who've committed suicide. We have exonerees who have gotten heavy into drugs. We have gotten addicted to drugs because of not being able to cope with all of the tremendous pressures of being accepted, being able to re-enter back into a community what they should have never had, being ripped away from, and at the same time feeling that that being alone, because when we're not together and we don't have an opportunity, in other words, to come together, that being alone says that you're the only one going through what you're going through, creates that in your mind because you don't have, because people around you they don't get it. They don't know what it is to suffer in an 8x10 for 17 years of their life. They don't know what it means for 17 years of their life to be degraded, humiliated, all of the things that you can do to tear down a person to make them to this, me, like now, look, see, always, never can get it together, never can, I'm trying not to do this part, person, but even more so because they come out here and don't feel that accepted and can't get it together, and they commit suicide. Because it's just, I've had a couple of brothers who did that, and I was, we all know each other and very familiar. And it really hurts because they constantly fight. We constantly fight. And when you feel like you're not winning in the fight, and you've done all that you could do, and no one else is turning around, no one else, you can't get no help with no one else. You feel like you lost, and there's nothing else you could do. So it's a lot of pressure, a lot of pressure.
It seems like the navigation is getting better, and I know that is what some organizations. I know the Innocence Project had come up with a recommendation, and I think they came out with their own like handbook. So we as researchers working with Obie, we were like, we should have a handbook. This should be a handbook for this particular population, their unique experiences, and that would help. But of course, the navigation comes through organizations like Obie's. And it sounds like the system that is in place to help people right when they're being, when the judge throws down the gavel, and there's a set of motions that, that go into a set of series of procedures that go into motion. And so then your organization is able to like reach out. And I think that used to be a challenge, just like getting contact with the individual who is being released, like making sure you are there for them afterwards. So that sounds like that's improving.
Yeah, that is been improving. I mean, like,
mental impact.
It has, because it's really about trusted work. You know what I mean? Them organizations, trusting the fact that Exonerated Nation is doing it's sincere and serious about doing the work, and trusting that we're going to do the right thing by the exonerated individual. And so, you're right. So over the course of time, those things have gotten a lot better in respect to that. And I am excited about what the Innocent Projects and Innocent Network is doing in regards to what they can do and how they can approach the aftercare, the after innocence work that is there, saying, saying to themselves that we need to do more than just exonerate these individuals, realizing the transitional issues that they're going through, that we go through. And so to then, to approach that strategically, and to come to approach that with the sort of kind of the support that comes back, the bagging that the Innocent Network has been tremendous, and it has been working a lot. I'm really excited about sort of kind of, the progression, but of what's been going on, and sort of kind of how everybody's like, it's starting to all happen now. You got 3 innocent projects in the state of California, and they're starting, we get in contact with more and more exonerees, but which also creates another anxiousness, right? Because now, having been able to continue to build appropriate programs, continue to find appropriate assistance for the diversity within that group, because we're all coming from a different sort of kind of angle in a sense, and being able to centralize those different angles in a way where it's meaningful to the entire population has been a great challenge too as well.
Could you talk about the issues around compensation for exonerees? I know this is it's a kind of a difficult topic, because everyone is coming from a different perspective. Everyone has different experiences, and so and not everybody gets to that level where they are compensated, let alone getting an apology from the authorities that actually are accountable for the wrongful imprisonment in the first place.
Correct. So, I mean, like, there's a lot of different issues surrounding compensations, and one of the issues surrounding compensation, I believe, is the language itself. In itself, so it sends people in multiple different definitional directions around compensation. And what I mean by that is how they identify who should be and shouldn't, and who's have to challenge the compensation, who should get it automatically, who should be denied, type of thing. When they're all dealing with the same group of individuals who have been who convictions has been overturned because the court has determined that some illegality has happened, whether that's through prosecutorial misconduct, ineffective assistance of counsel, official misconduct, or all of the above, or forensics, or DNA clearance, any of those things. And because what happened is that, like, for me, in my case, what happened was that, I got exonerated in 2011, but the court didn't find me factually innocent of those crimes until 2012. But what happened was the district attorney appealed that, right? He appealed that, so I'm still not at that time considered innocent of the crime in which they framed me for. Yeah, the conviction been overturned, but in respect to the courts was not recognizing that as overturning as a finding of innocence until the court made that determination, or they settled in on that fact finding. And that took 5 years. In other words, to accomplish it. So that's one of the challenges there. The other challenge of it is that there's 3 different ways, in other words, a person can be compensated, right? Through the Victims' Compensation Board, through a civil complaint, or through a civil complaint against the city or the county. On either one of those 3. And or really 1983 in the Victims' Compensation. But for the Victims' Compensation Board, you have to be declared factually innocent. And so for me, being exonerated after being from the court, I couldn't immediately file for my Victims' Compensation Award because the Victims' Compensation Board challenges your claim of being a victim of being wrongfully convicted. So they say that, well, prove to us that you was wrongfully convicted and that you're innocent of that wrongful conviction. And I'm like, isn't that semantics though? When you tell me you want me to prove that my wrongful conviction was a wrongful conviction, that I was innocent of that. Like, I don't understand. So that's another one of the issues there, is that you have to redress your claim multiple times. So you have to, once the court, unless your habeas court finds you immediately factually innocent of those things, then it sort of opens the door for your victim's compensation, where it makes it, in the state of California, automatic, but it still leaves a challenge for you on your civil, because still civilly, though the court has acknowledged those things, it's always about whether or not they acknowledge it, but was your civil rights violated, which causes another whole redress and a delay in whether you get compensated or not. Because even in a civil complaint, you can go through all of those things and they can still not award you, which has happened. We have Daryl Burton as an example of that. We have Tom Goldstein, who had won an award. The jury awarded an award, and the courts took it back, saying that award was too large of an award, and came back with a different ruling. And so, again, that's the challenge in there. The challenge in there is that, really is around the wording and, how they are classifying individuals that have been put in prison for crimes in which they didn't commit. And, for me, it gets back to the definitional word of exonerated. If they apply, the etymological definition of the word, then, which means to remove one from an accused charge, then that in itself, and then leaving intact that person's presumption of innocence, and then therefore removes the challenge to have to be proven innocent, try to prove in fashion innocent, because the presumption of innocence is still retained, is retained within the individual. And so it's all around the wording, and that in itself gives the courts and the Victims Compensation Board an opportunity to argue you back and fight it back, and ultimately either give it to you or not. And really wanting to dispel that number, that thing that we all get compensated because, well, you was wrongfully in prison. They paid you, right? No. Maybe 2% or 1% of individuals who've been framed and put in prison for crimes they didn't commit get compensated for those crimes. And that's on a national level.
Thank you for helping to dispel that myth, because I think that is a common, it's something we'll say that, someone will say that, oh, well, how could this happen in America? That surely people who've gone through this are compensated. And I have to explain, especially outside the country, if we're internationally at a conference, exoneration means different things in different countries and different states of America. There are different compensation statutes. Some, like Pennsylvania, doesn't even believe in compensation, and compensation is very different. It's not like, some people's, of course there's different, civil cases that are brought to court, and that's different. And maybe you would have attorneys who specialize in different types of suits, but it's, I know in some states it's like literally just maybe a few, like thousands of dollars. It's nothing like,
nothing at all. And again, it really gets down to the wording. One of the things that I've been interested in talking about, what I've been talking about is not calling it a compensation, but restitution. Because compensation brings about a redress of proving to be compensated. Restitution comes from a place of acknowledgement of an exonerated person. You restitute the person you make that person whole again, right? And so it's a different way in how it's being talked about. And until I think when we begin to start advocating and really addressing, looking at it, coming from it from a restitutional place versus a compensation place, then, maybe the challenges of that wouldn't be as much. But again, though, you automatically, when you say compensate, you need to compensate me, the person, it automatically just sort of kind of in your mind just brings up a sort of defensible argument for one not to, versus a sympathetic one when you approach it from a restitution. The person comes from is more of a concern about, why we should restitute this person, like what happened, sort of approach, versus the other way around, I believe. And I just think that, because it has been, it's a compensation, it gives way for, to claim that you're not a victim to be compensated. Victims get compensated. People who have been wrong get restitution. And that's why the court makes us pay restitution, because the court identified a crime as a wrong against a person. And so they make us pay restitution, a victim's restitution that has to get extrapolated out of the monies that we get either from working in there or it gets sent to us from family members. 33%, 55% of our money goes towards restitution to the victim. And so, so it really needs to be sort of a conversation around that. And again, like I said, it really gets back to, the intent and the word and the language that they put out there around us.
Thank you for that reframing. I think reframing it that way is so important. And it's something that I really want to focus on in our, just going on in our research, because I think just the language that's where we have to start. We have to start with the root of every sort of, reform, and it's always around language and changing the language. It's not really so much about tweaking a little bit of a law that doesn't really fit. And I think that's it's just so on point to point that out, Obie. Thank you for that, because I need to be reminded about that, because I'm always thinking about, well, let's just change the law. Well, maybe that law doesn't really, maybe we need a new law, and maybe we need new language around that. So that's really important. So we talked a little bit about Obie's law, and 672, and I know you mentioned 701, which is like so amazing. And then we had 702. I guess that was at the time Assembly member Shirley Weber. Now she's our Secretary of State. Awesome. Yeah. She put that through. I guess there was no funding around it. It like sort of it passed, but there's like, okay, we're gonna keep this here until we have some money.
Yeah, and that was 702 was around mental health. And again, just nationally and and on a local level, mental health is already an issue, public-wise, period. And so, funding for it, now all of those things mental health is already an issue. And again, it's only more intensified for the exonerated person because, again, looking for, opportunities for those individuals who have been affected by the system, not having to, only have to go to one place or the other, but having that open choice and wherever they choose to go to have that waived, to have that fee waived in or taken care of by the state, or reimbursed for that. And so, it really comes down to the practitioners and what they willing to accept, whether they're willing to accept, Medi-Cal, Medicaid, whether, less or more. And so, it got stuck in appropriations around the numbers, it's sad, but it did. But, it didn't create a situation for us to give up on that at all. It just made us more creative in how we phrase that, how we, the language around that, really getting strategic in the specific acts around that mental health and what that looks like. And so never giving up on that, realizing that ultimately that the most important thing for the health and the stability, and not only the community, but specifically of our community, is our mental health, and to being able to address the prison traumatic stress that we suffer from in relation to our post-traumatic stress that we also deal with. So when we deal with those double alphabets, that post-prison traumatic stress syndrome, that is getting the appropriate look that it needs to get, right? I think the reason why veterans have such a beneficial program, because it had an effective look on the conditions of around their PTSD, the things that they're suffering from because of all of the trauma, in other words, that they sort of seen. And so I think if we give that, or when that attention is given to our population, so that the prison traumatic stress can be an identifiable trauma and a syndrome that individuals that, in other words, that can be there as this identifiable syndrome, that I think that would be a great thing,
I think also this was pointed out to me by Dr. Cummings. She just mentioned basically like in terms of using different language, it changes the narrative and the way that you are using different language in capturing that phrase, that new PPTSD, post prison. That's really reframing it completely. That's something I think is just so unique, and we've discussed that in terms of the experiences of exonerees and those who are wrongfully convicted. There is a completely different type of, and you've actually kind of mentioned this in terms of like PTSD experienced by veterans.
Yeah.
And it's very similar, and the levels are just really off the hook compared to other groups. And there is the stigma that you mentioned that is shared by most exonerees. And in terms of healing, and you touched on this in trauma, there, in our discussions and on our research, we've, really found that peer-to-peer exoneree to exoneree support has really been a key factor in successfully, it's, really, it's like transitioning and really being supported, for some people who have been, wrongfully imprisoned. And that's really been a really key factor, and not so much the traditional clinical therapeutic route. That's been something that through opportunities to engage with other exonerees and go to events that you have, organized as, through the Exonerated Nation organization, and having the opportunity to convene and be in, just be able to sit and get the support from exonerees who understand where you're coming from, like no other individual. Is really unique.
I mean, like not only is that, but it really is, it empowers the individual at the same time. So, and look at another aspects of our world where those things have been a benefit to the population, where you have other groups such as, AA, NA, individuals who are going through addiction issues, where they come together because the community support, because no one else understands sort of kind of that plight. Even through our AA, they have sponsors, support sponsors when individuals are feeling like they may have a triggering effect and they're going to break down. That person, they call another individual who has been addicted to help them navigate through that thing. And so we realize and understand how peer-to-peer works in those environments and in those different settings, and also in the benefit and how that's been benefiting and working for us as well, that peer-to-peer coming together, that opportunity, in other words, to being able to come together, to convene, and not only to convene, to being able to sort of kind of to be expressive in that way, but at the same time to share in techniques in ways, in other words, of how we were able to process through some of the traumas and some of those triggering events that happen within our thinking. So when we get triggered, for the exoneree, we call each other. Like sometimes, like we may have something may happen at home with one of our mates, or something like that, or maybe something at school, or something out in public. I'll get calls from I use my buddy Josh Keezer as an example. He's out. He gets himself out in public, and occasionally, because of his prison traumatic stress, he's triggered in different ways, because he's still working with an affected population while still being affected. And so when he's, and not having no outlet, in other words, to where he's able to convene with another body of individuals to sort of kind of purge out those things that he's sort of going through with the group that he's working with and himself. And so he's triggered a lot. And he's always like, he'll hit me up like, man, I don't know who else to call. I just need to call you, because I know that you understand, and I know that I can talk to you about this and not have this and not have that. And so that has been the power in the peer-to-peer, because it's preventing and it's saving, right? And so when I think about our peer-to-peer thing, I think about our brothers who suffered, who didn't have this there and committed suicide. That because they didn't have, that sponsor, because they got triggered and they was going through some stuff, and didn't have, and didn't know if I can call the Innocence Network. That's to my lawyer. They don't really understand. Like, they don't get why I'm so anxious right now. They asked me to work through it. Have I talked to this and have I talked to that? And so, we wanted to be a buffer in there, and not to, so that the person, so we wouldn't feel alone. Again, peer-to-peer counseling is the best cure for loneliness, because peer-to-peer counseling can happen, me and you on the phone. It can happen in group, and it can happen, and it happens in a way because it happens where a person feels like this is a safe place. It's a safe, and anytime you feel like you're in a safe place, you feel more comfortable with having open discussions, having difficult discussions, because you feel like you're in a safe place and you don't have no worries of being judged or being judgmental on those things. So it works.
So I had a question about SB 1050. I feel like after Obie's law, this was something I felt that had a direct influence or impact on health, mental health, basics. And I just, could you talk to us about gate money and, how people would think, oh, gate money and your
Man,
experience?
I think out of, I'm really grateful for all of the things that we've given, but I really am grateful for AB 1050 because AB 1050, get back to Obie's law. Obie's law was that conversation to get us in. AB 1050 solidified, sort of kind of was like that springboard because it gave it when we went back after Obie's law to talk about, when we come home, we don't get $200 gate money. We don't have a counselor. We don't have all of these things. We're not automatic. We don't have this enrollment, and we don't have no medical, and these. And we have to find ways to give food and things like that. And so, that happened because the administrator, the semi individuals, Skinner and Sawyer and Weber and all of the clan up there, they said it should be more, something more. And AB 1050 was the opening of something more. And so what they did with AB 1050, they gave exonerated individuals gate money. They said, no, they definitely, if we could give somebody who committed the crime gate money, we could definitely give somebody who didn't commit the crime something when they walk out of the door, because they understood, when how to get on the bus. I need to maybe get something to eat, get my hair cut, any of that stuff needs to happen. I can't do none of that if I ain't got no help. How can I, happenstance, I get out, innocent projects come and pick me up, and they don't do all of the other things, take me in. I gotta get on the bus. I don't got no money. I need some help. So 1050 gave them $1,200 gate money. AB 1050 automatically enrolled them into Cal Fresh because the assembly individuals understood that they needed to eat. And they shouldn't have to spend the money that they got from their gate money to possibly buy clothes and some shelter, to have to spend that money also on food. And so they made it automatic for them individuals to get enrolled into Cal Fresh, give them the food stamp down, which is great. And then it went even further because they understood our plight in respect to, again, getting back to that, navigating, finding a job and all of those things. And so when it came to expunging our records and getting those things off of our records was very important. You had individuals like Bill Richards, even myself, that had gotten pulled over, ticket violation, maybe you didn't turn blinker or something, or the cops just behind you, and you're like, oh my goodness, are they gonna pull up my case? Like, do they know? All of those things, and they understood that anxiety that we may feel, not knowing whether or not did these things get properly expunged all the way to the Department of Justice. And so they acted, and they really acted in respect to individuals who have been framed for sex crimes, understanding that they needed to go a step further because those individuals were being placed on registries. They was being all kind of, websites, all this stuff. So it was an immediate removal of those things and some sort of acknowledgement in their record that these things it was framed, and it was some sort of acknowledgement that was wrong. So we was really grateful for that. And then ultimately it was about the Medi-Cal or Medicaid. We needed medical, right? Yeah, Obie's law connected them to those providers, but what about the service? We need medical so we can go to those providers. We need all of that stuff. And so, you're right. So automatically enrolled us into Medi-Cal, Medicaid, so we can go get the services from these providers, so we can go get some help. And it also, it gave, a little bit more fluff to the mental health that was stipulated in Obie's law. So I was excited. AB 1050 was a banger out of the door because, it gave guys and girls money in their pocket, and when they walked out. So we was really excited about that. I'm grateful too.
Congratulations on that. I mean, I know it's like, it's just, what was it, 20, let me look at the year again. I just looked at it and I'm like, I can't believe it's
17.
Yeah, 2018. So it doesn't seem, and of course we started, studying together, and looking at our research project in 2018. So it happened, not too long ago.
Not too long ago.
And so of course,
I want to cut you off, but I want you guys to understand that AB 1050 came directly from the result of us bringing the body together with the Sarah Health Foundation, having that diverse conversation with the exonerated population about what are their needs, what is going on. Namisha, Gail, and the gang, everyone coming together to be from great help to extrapolate that information and put it all in a way to when we went to the Capitol, it was representative. Then we could talk to those things about our population and what was going on. And AB 1050, I'm joking, that was a direct result of the gathering that we had with the Sarah Health Foundation. That's just the bottom line. So that was really great. That was another reason why I was super excited about that, because I actually had a chance to see the work and the benefit of the work. So the study, the information we was able to gather, take that information, represent that, and then to get 1050 from that. It was just like, okay, let's do that again. Yeah, let's do that again. Research time.
Like you said, if the data speaks for itself. If you don't have the data, then you can't move the needle forward. And I can say I was just a little bit of part of that. That's just a group effort. But I'll give it all to you, Gail, and Sierra Foundation. I mean, they were great, and I hope we get to work with them soon. We're going to keep trying to. We're going to be partnering with them and having some discussions and moving forward with more research opportunities. But I did want to ask you, because you brought up expungements. Yeah. Is expungement automatic for someone who's been exonerated?
No, not automatic. Let's put some respect upon it. So again, getting back to the wording, the person that is exonerated is not the person who has gotten found factually innocent or actually innocent of that crime. So though a person has been exonerated of a sex crime and has been sent home, again, prime example of that, we have Rhiners Darnell, that's out of Hawaii, who got exonerated of a sex crime, who had came home and still had to fight for his innocence. I think over 8 years that it took before he actually got his factual finding of innocence, in other words, for that to be expunged from his record. Or individuals who come home like Darwin Crabtree, who had came home on parole, still had to register as a sex offender, was still going through the process of exoneration. After exoneration, you really had that hiccup about those things still being there. So expungement was a big deal, and it's very important because, again, even when you're going for when you're going for a nice job, people do more than just a regular background check. They do an extensive background check. And, the fear of, being denied based upon the fact that they come across this false allegation that was put against you X amount of years ago that you was subsequently exonerated for, but those things was not taken off your record, can be an issue. And it can be denied and can prevent too as well. And so he was really excited about that.
And is it's when that happens finally for an individual who's wrongfully convicted, Obie, and they get the expungement, how does that, who pays for it? Is there a fee? Is it, I have done some research where it's very costly to have.
It definitely is a fee. So you need an attorney. So the Innocent Project got you out. They are the one to do that aspect, and so to get you out of the jail. Now, now you have to have an attorney to help you, to navigate, to get you connected, get all of that stuff expunged off your record. So prior to AB 1050, you had to go through that. You had to pay to get all of those things done. AB 1050 made it expungement automatic. And so where the moment you was exonerated, it triggered that all the way up, and it was going all the way up to the Department of Justice. And that your follow through with an attorney is great to do to make sure that you've been off of there. But yeah, that stuff comes as a cost to the exonerated individual to get charge you to get a wrongful conviction, get it framed, get your wrongful conviction off of a record that never should have been there. They're going to charge you to do that, though. Yeah, there is a fee. It's crazy. But
wow. So it all comes down to the wording and the language. And I know in our research, we were, and thankfully, Obie, you brought this to our attention. the difference between wrongful conviction and exonerated is, there's a difference. And I remember when I first gave a presentation, I was in Canada, and a lot of folks were like, what are you talking about? Of course, couldn't be happening in the US of A. But I had to give the difference because it is different. And according to the National Registry of Exonerations, they lay it out for us, and we're like, wow. So it kind of changed. It didn't, it just gave us more sort of frame for reference and looking at our research. And so, of course, if we were going to look at a particular population, we were like, okay, well, we want those who are exonerated, but we could also focus on those who are wrongfully convicted or are still waiting. But it almost sounds like, if you don't have access to wealth upon, in a big support network and someone who's going to do stuff pro bono, or you can afford an attorney that specializes in expungements, it just sounds like it's going to be so difficult. And it just depends on your particular case, right, your innocence attorneys, post-conviction attorneys, to get it through. Like you said, there's attorneys to get you, found innocent, and then there are those who specialize in the other side.
I get to, I can, again, part of, one of our research partners is Xavier Johnson, one of the advisory board members in the Exonerated Nation, that is that's in that conundrum where he has to find a civil attorney to represent him civilly, so that he can to pursue a complaint to be compensated. So again, getting back to semantics, in words, playing word games about the wrong that they did to a person, because ultimately it boils down to imagine them having to compensate what is it now, 2,000, close to 3,000 individuals in the United States at the cost in which they have been having to pay these compensations out in the millions, tens of millions of dollars. They understand they don't want to be in that financial place. First and foremost, having to dish out all of that money, but they sure don't want to be in a position where they didn't compensate that many people, that many minority people, where they've given over millions of dollars to a group of individuals who they felt as though they wasn't supposed to be compensated in the first place or made whole in the first place. So they gotta be careful about how they clear them in the beginning, because if they say it in a way, they realize, oh, well, we can be held liable in the civil complaint if we said it this way, or if we freed them like in these terms. So, it really is a public concern for me. And it really is, it really gets down to, them and them lack of being, using, being humility, using humanity. It's a lack of humanity. They just don't, it's like they just dispose of a person knowingly doing something wrong to that individual, and then constantly trying to get away from having to fix what they broke by way of continue to dig lies and make fluff around that. And so it's just a lack of humility for me on their aspect in the way that they play their semantics with their words, so that they won't make a person whole, to keep them in this state of place of inertia.
Right. It's like this, what we describe in some of our literature. It's really focusing on, the vindictiveness of the state, the DAs. They just don't want to say no. And I think a lot of us have read articles, and it's going on now in a lot of other cases, high profile cases, but they just don't want to, admit that they were wrong. So that is that state of limbo. But I wanted to ask you about your experience around post-conviction attorneys. And so Obie knows about this data that we've been working on, and in our study, we were really surprised to find that that for the exonerees who participated in our study, we found that for most of them, that post-conviction attorneys was like really key in terms of the transitional support for exonerees. and it was really vital, you know, in terms of like how they were able to rebuild their lives, you know, in the absence of state or federal support. So I wanted to kind of get your feelings on that, if you can expound on that.
I mean, yeah, I can. I mean, like, cause I had a really, like, when me and my attorney Paige came up, I mean, like, you have to understand that. So this is the exonerated first. It's like ET. It's their first contact. It's like first contact, right? You know, and then and not only is it first contact, but it's that continual contact. So this person has been, you know, supporting and believing in this individual before in the exoneration. And so what happens is that, you know, you know, it's about, it kills loneliness. I'll tell you the truth. Like, you know, and you don't want to, you know, when attorneys come along, assisting you, and you pour in and you begin to trust in someone after not trusting someone for so long, specifically with something that is so, you know, so important in your life, your freedom, like you trusting them with all this stuff, like to get you out, and you believing in all of that, and then it happens. You know, you just can't walk away. You know, it takes sometimes 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, maybe longer to exonerate a person. And so that's relationship building. And it's relationship building in a hostile environment, right? So this exonerated person is in a hostile environment where they lack that relationship building opportunity. And then someone comes in and begins to start fighting for them. That builds relationship. And so, in that relationship, it builds a confidence and a stability and a sort of an unrelentlessness between the two parties to let go. One on the end because the fear of what maybe, you know, not one, you know, it's the parent not wanting to let the kid go, not knowing whether or not do you got it all? Do you really understand yet? Is this, you know, feeling that? But then also from the exonerated person, because the attachment of the security of someone trusting and believing in them, and not just sort of that aspect of it. And so it's crazy because, you know, I talked to a couple of attorneys about that, and, you know, in the relationships that is sort of formulated between the client and the exonerated individual, and then even afterwards, like the client, I mean, the attorney and their overprotectiveness. Again, getting back to that, you know, it even affects them, right? Where they have been working with this person, navigate through this process. They've been successful in that navigation. They've gotten them out of there. Concern has grown in there about the well-being of that person and about assisting that person in that transition. And so it becomes a difficult sort of let go, in a sense, or, you know, not even so much. I don't want to use the word let go, but it's, you know, sort of, you know, you can fly now type of thing for both of us, for the client and like, and for the attorney, like, you know, the confidence in the individual, not to having to sort of depend on that support anymore, and the support having the confidence and knowing that they don't have to be that supportive anymore. And you find that same sort of tangle when it comes to your family members and your significant others as well. Everyone has an overprotecting sense of value for that person. Like, want to tell you, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do that, you don't need to go over there, you don't want to. And the exonerated person is like, well, I need to experience that. And so it becomes, you know, it's a crazy back and forth that happens between the two. But it's, you know, it happens. It's just the nature of relationship building, I believe.
Well, thank you for expounding on that, because it's the strong and the close bonds are, you know, that form are so unique, and it's a interdependent relationship. It's kind of like, oh, what you can think about the ethical considerations, and I know, you know, we've had discussions about that, and so yeah, I'm actually writing my paper on this. This would be the second paper on the study, or not the second paper, but the third paper, actually, because Dr. Cummings' paper is going to come out first. And it's on peer support, and it's great. So I'm so excited. but yeah, we were able to get, come up with different topics that really funneled out of the themes that we were, were being revealed to us. And we're working with some research partners and kind of looking at what you're talking about, the trust and the safety and the guardianship and the protectiveness of a post-conviction attorney and with their clients. It's an extraordinary relationship that I'm really excited to explore more with possibly post-conviction attorneys themselves. So that's like the next step. So yeah, I want to leave room for questions and answers for the group, but maybe we can open that up now, or that'd be really great. Just like open it up to the class. And I want to let you know, last week Ignacio was here.
Yes.
So he's like, oh, he's gonna be here. So I like to always. I'm like, one day I want to have you together, but that'd probably be too hard. But I like to, have you guys follow each other or close together on the schedule.
And that's a good thing, because Ignacio is like the golden baton of batons. And if, I call him a golden baton because when you think about a race, and that's what we in advocacy work and in criminal justice reform and public health. It's not that it's a race, but it is a race, right? It's a relay, right? We got to, we help each other. One go one place, okay, we got to push each other on. And for Ignacio, he's that tool that we use to pass off, because he's just he's the connector. It's like, and he's good at what he does. All the success that we've been able to have at the Capitol has, it spurs from him. His relationship that he was able to establish, the relationships, in other words, he's been able to help me facilitate, the ones that he's been able to bring together. So he's just been great. I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, dang, I said, when I knew he was going, I was like, man, I'm gonna be speaking behind him. Ignacio, I already know he coming with some good stuff.
No, it's totally complimentary. It's fantastic to have, both of you speak to us back to back, and to hear about, all of the great legislation, and really kind of hear from, your perspective. You were instrumental in getting these bills passed. And from what I'm hearing, it sounds like things are getting they're getting better. I think, it's like you said, I'm like the lifeguard, not the lifeguard, I'm like the coach. I can kind of take a step back. That would be really great. That's a great analogy. And
look at how exonerees now. They come home, they get $1,200 gate money. They get automatic enrollment into Medi-Cal, Medicaid. They have free tuition. They have $5,000 to support them with housing, 4 years up to support in respect to that. The expungement, they also have Obie's law that's in place. All of those things that's in place now that wasn't there when I walked out of the door, like none of the stuff. And so, yeah, things have gotten a little bit better. And yeah, there is still a whole lot of more trail to cut. But we really are excited about what has happened. Because it's benefited, like, exonerees like Jared McPuckett, also other exonerees such as Josh, individuals taking advantage of our education bill. And so it's just like, man, I'm grateful to that. It's been it's surprising me sometimes, like, Gil, she'll say something to me, or Ignacio will say something to me like, well, didn't you do this and didn't you do that, and isn't this and it's those things? Like, no, that's what we did. And yeah, those things are, but that ain't it. And they always trying to, they always about slowing me down a little bit about my creativity, about ways to be creative, to be able to help our population. I think I've pushed one thing forward. I got a 5K going because, I was really motivated. I was like, hey, you think we should do a marathon, a 5K run for awareness for the exonerated population? And, they was like, oh, but let's just do this first. And I'm like, yeah, but I was a little persistent. So persistent pays. Dr. Cummins was able to create that thing, create that opportunity for us. And so it's that there in itself, like those things there has been so exciting. Working with Touro, working with individuals like Nemisha and Gail and Ignacio has helped build the confidence in me. In other words, to do the work, but to continue to do the work and to do it with purpose and with some determination at the same time. So.
Well, it's been a privilege and an honor for me to just be a part of it. And you give me inspiration and confidence to do the work that I'm so excited to be doing. I mean, I really, as a public health, person, I just felt like I found my calling, and I'm just really excited to be a part of the process. But with that, I would like to open it up to our students and community members. Please, you all, if you have any questions, feel free to ask Obie. Look at my gallery view.
I have a question, Professor Kelly. Mr. Anthony, my name is Tina. I'm one of the community members in the class. It is, it's always so amazing when each week we read these articles and they are kind of nebulous. It's out there. And then we have the speaker come that week and we meet the speaker and then it just crystallizes and it makes it just so much more real than just reading something in a book or an article. It's great when we listen to a podcast because we can hear that person's voice. So this is really incredible, being able to sit here and listen to your story. It's just phenomenal how you have not only advocated for yourself, but then in turn made this your life's work and, created this this program for others. And so my question is, so do the people that you're helping now, is that specific to Californians? I'm just curious of what happens across the nation for the others that get out. I know Professor Kelly mentions, particular state who doesn't have funding and resources. Is that also part of your work is, creating these bills for California, but how collectively we can help others?
Yeah, absolutely. So Exonereed Nation is a national organization, and we are grateful for the success that we've been having in the state of California. And it is our ambition, in other words, to take that success and to do it on a broader basis nationally, to be able to go into those states where we're having opportunity, in other words, to do that specifically and particularly around those bills that address immediate needs such as housing, food, and money. And so right now I'm having an opportunity particularly with 703, the housing bill, having that federal sort of underlay and guidance already outlined within the bill, makes it easier for us, in other words, to be able to do those, to take that bill into other states. And so policy-wise, yes, we're definitely looking to expand our work, but community-wise, we are already doing those things on a national level, where we're bringing individuals from around the United States to our convenings. When we just recently had in Sonoma County, where we were able to bring, I believe it was 25 individuals from around the United States, probably more from around the United States, to convene there to talk about issues and the ways, in other words, that exonerated nations can address things that are going on for their immediate needs are concerned in their particular states, and ways, in other words, that we can approach it from where we're at to being able to facilitate the help there in their state. So programmingly, yes, we are doing work in other states, bringing individuals in, doing our leadership development, having our holistic healing. We have an opportunity, in other words, to be of assistance for temporary jobs on a national level. So being able to help individuals in that aspect around the United States. Policy-wise is a little bit more different. It really is about, having those relationships built in those states, and specifically having language that we can transfer. Like, we would love to be able to take Obie's law and to put them into states like Pennsylvania and other states where you don't have any bills that are in place that help the exonerated population. And so we definitely aspire to do those things and looking to build relationships and places to do so.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you too as well for your question, and also for your comments and your sentiments in respect to the work that I'm doing. One of the things I'm all, I say a lot now is that, I believe the way out of suffering is to experience suffering. And so for me to being able to experience the exonerated issues, what they're going through, just give me that sort of that moment in time where I have to navigate through my own, but also creates that will of help for me too as well. Because as I'm helping to figure out something that's going on in their mind, in their world, again, what you call transferable, applicable skills that are there that I can utilize in my own world too. So.
Hi, Obie. My name is Heather. I just wanted to echo what Tina said and just really thank you for pushing through what seems like very painful memories just to share with us your work. And I just want to encourage you and say that we're so thankful to have you. I'm so thankful to have gotten to, listen to you share. Thank you. As future students in medicine and in public health, how would you say that we can best support your work now in Exonerated Nations? What would you like to see from students?
I mean, definitely what I love to be able to see from students is, to get involved, a little bit more involvement in the advocacy aspect, a little bit more involved in regards to looking at ways, in other words, the ways that, to recraft the conversations around what has been phrased as wrongful convictions. Because, one of the things I always say, there is no wrongful convictions. People who suffer in prison for crimes they didn't commit was framed. People did things knowingly and willfully, in other words, for that thing to happen to that individual. And so really, for me, really for students, really is to get involved in the advocacy aspect of it, to do things, within their community, on campus, with their friends and family, churches and things like that. You're right. I appreciate the fact to being able to bring myself to the story. I get, like, I tell that to my exonerated population, brothers and sisters too, as well, that look, man, like, we the cause of all of the reform that's manifesting within the criminal justice system in every aspect. Because you was framed and put in prison, these things here are changing. And because of your advocacy work, that change is coming about, right? Because absent the fact that you're out sharing your story, absent the fact that you're out advocating for the changes of these policies and things that made it for you to where it was possible for you to get framed and put in prison, is the why reform is happening. And so, and the only way that is possible is, in other words, to bring the body to present, right? Whereas what Tina was saying, that it is powerful to be able to read those stories and to be able to hear those things but it's a different thing when that body is in front of you. It's a totally different thing to being able to experience a person's story from them versus from a reading, because you have an opportunity, I believe, to be able to get the intimate part of the story from the person. Versus from the reading and from the hearing. So thank you guys for having me for that.
Just check in and see we have one question here. I'm going to read it from the chat. Thank you for your time, Obie. And I had a question for Mr. Obie Anthony. I am also a community member. Looking at your website, I was interested if your organization was partnering with any large companies. For example, some of those referenced in the Fair Chance Pledge. Thank you again.
So we have partnered in previous times with companies such as Kaiser. We also have a relationship with Mojo, which is a production entertainment company that does work with the celebrities and so forth. And so, yes, are we looking to have relationships with other big companies out in the community? Yeah, like Gap and Nike, Apple. We have a building relationship with Apple, which we're really excited about, and we're really looking forward to how those things will manifest. But we're definitely out to build those relationships with the community and those individuals that are footprints within our communities, realizing and understanding groups such as that could be of a greater assistance to our population, not only in their transition such as with work, but also when it comes to the small tangible things such as clothing, cosmetics, and things of that nature. So, yes.
It's a great question. I have one question for you, Obie, before we go. What would you like to see changed or improved or completely done over in terms of a board that would be responsible for meeting the needs of exonerees, upon release? So like we have the California Victims Board.
Right.
I just wondered what your thoughts would be around that type of organization.
I think that is a great thing to do, to have in place. We've had conversations about what it looks like to have an exoneree to sit on the Victims Compensation Board. But that's on the cusp of having a conversation about that we should never have to go to a Victims Compensation Board. That the Victims Compensation Board is designated to individuals who have been victims of crime. And until the state acknowledges us as victims of a crime by the system, then we shouldn't be going through that process. There should be a different whole sort of board, in other words, that we go to. So I think that's a fantastic idea, in other words, to have sort of an exoneree commission board there, or somewhere, or even, part of the legislative body, or in some fashion or another. I think that's a great idea. One of the things, I've dabbled with it, but I'm always getting put in my place. Slow down, stay on, let's just do this one thing. We can't do this over here. And I'm like, but man, that'd be great, though. I'm telling you. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And we've had conversations around that, just again thinking about what it looks like to have someone there on the Victim Compensation Board, or someone there at the state capitol as a representative of our population, saying that we need someone to represent the exonerated population just as well as all the other rest of the population is being represented there at the state capitol.
Thank you. That's a really good food for thought. I think about that all the time. I think that's one of our recommendations, is that we just have a completely different board that is made up of exonerees and community members, right. Some law enforcement, some lobbyists, some key legislators, people who are doing the work on the ground at Exonerated Nation, innocence projects, like a completely different look for a board that would really.
That's our future. I believe that. I think that is something that is possible in our future to be able to accomplish, because as you see the innocent networks begin to start navigating and moving around that sort of after exoneration care that they're doing, and having more strategic conversations around formalizing those things, about ways, in other words, to do that more strategically. In a way where you don't have so many different overlapping type of things that are happening, but that we can all do these things that sort of kind of in a way. So a board is almost an inevitable process of that, in other words. So I think it's going to happen.
That sounds like a good direction. I'm glad that's the trajectory that it seems like it's being laid out. Well, it brings us to 6:01. I just want to open it up to any final questions before we say thank you and good evening to Mr. Anthony. And thank you so much for being here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't imagine this class without you. You and Ignacio are so instrumental in like developing just a lot of the content that I think about in this class, and really focusing on collateral consequences of mass incarceration, detrimental experiences to this unique population. So I just think that it's so great to have you a part of this course in this track.
I really appreciate being part of this. Thank you again, class, for having me, being patient and listening to me, and all of those things. One of the things that I hope that would happen, for me, is always this: is that through our conversations and when we come together and through these studies, that ultimately that it sparks some brand new thing for us that we can lay down as a seed that can help somebody else. Ultimately realizing that, all of us that we are in the line of help, helping help. And that ultimately we do this thing, we're doing this because we see and we have experienced wrong on some level in our world, and realizing that there's a better way. And we understand, I didn't know that I didn't even remember public health wasn't a thing that ran through my mind. I didn't think about public health. Like, I didn't until Miss Cummings. So like, yeah, well, Touro is doing it. We have this public health. And, so I'm like, well, what is public health? Let me talk to you about that. And it does just so much sense. The work that you guys are doing, the concern, in other words, for the well-being and what that looks like. From when I come back to the community, what does it look like for me and the effect on us, for you guys in the population, and the public health concern that should be there when you put a person that you just took out of a 8x10 box right back into a vastly bigger world and with no assistance. To be considerate and thoughtful of ways, in other words, to how to approach that and to address that and to talk about that, it's power in itself. And I'm just appreciative to be part of that process and to be considered in that process. So I thank you for the work that you all are doing. And again, it's super. I can't tell you how much I'm inspired by it and grateful. I can say, it's my little way of being part of a university. I get a chance to be part of a university. This is my way. I'm like a student sometimes, and I can come in and pretend and be part of the class. I'm part of the class, so I like that. And I love doing it. So thank you for having me.
And I'll continue.
Well, thank you for teaching us.
Make Obie and Namisha blush. No, but we actually reached out to Obie and Ignacio, I think back in 2017, when we pestered and harassed Ignacio to death to come to our campus to talk about his work in this area. He brought Obie along, and this is where we learned sort of the social justice framework that Ignacio had, and developed that social framework into being a lobbyist, and then connecting with ObieAnthony. We were just like, oh my goodness, these folks deserve to be one of our public health heroes. And so that's how we actually kind of were introduced to both Ignacio and Obie, and we've been grateful ever since, because again, this has really expanded not only the work that we've been able to do, but expanded this awareness of this issue for our students and our community. And I think it's really been an opportunity to build in sort of why this is not just a social justice issue, but a human rights issue, which Obie articulates so well. And we're grateful to be a part of this work, and hope that U.S. students are able to capture and take in some of this information and build on policy development, and really understand how policies really do create change and can transform not just individual opportunities, but opportunities for populations at large that are so deserving. So again, thank you, Obie, and thank you, Namisha, for coordinating this course.
Thank you. Remember, our populations are people, so when we change populations, we change the people. Can't have a population without people, right? And I'm always telling my wife, hey, look, remember, people gonna be people. And you gotta let them be who they are and not be, none of that. You just gotta let it happen, enjoy that. So I really am grateful to this program, and I really look forward to, to the sort of kind of, what we are able to extrapolate from our research and what we're able to do with that. And I look forward to working with every one of you students at some level or another in the future when you go off to do your stuff. So remember, Obie Anthony knows the difference between use and misuse. You could call on me for whatever, dissertations, whatever, papers, whatever, come to your job. I need you to come out here to, I'll come to Holly Baba if I needed to for anybody, don't matter. I love what you're doing. I'm always in support of what y'all doing, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Obie. I'm so grateful. We're so grateful for your continued support and the opportunity to partner with you.
Yeah,
thank you so much for being here tonight.
Absolutely. You guys all take care. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Night.
Thanks to Dr. Cummings for sitting in. I know you had lots of meetings today, so all day long. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you, Namisha. You all have a good
evening.
All right, talk to you soon.
Too.